It was just another quiet morning along the Ming coastline, the kind of ordinary day where people believed nothing bad would happen. On the wall stood a conscripted soldier, once a farmer, silently counting the hours until his shift ended and he could return home. He had armor, a weapon, and clear orders, yet deep down he had never experienced real combat or faced someone truly trying to kill him. Below him, the sea looked calm and almost friendly, like it had no intention of delivering violence to the shore that day. Behind him were walls, towers, and fellow soldiers, everything an empire would normally trust to keep danger far away. This was the Ming Empire, one of the largest, richest, and most powerful states the world had ever seen. Yet people living along the coast had learned a painful lesson. These defenses didn't always decide who survived. Then someone suddenly pointed toward the horizon, and in that moment, the calm sea stopped feeling calm at all. Dark shapes appeared, moving fast and confidently, organized in a way that felt nothing like desperate criminals. Shouts erupted, orders overlapped, and fear spread through the ranks faster than any command could regain control. Within minutes, soldiers began running, not because they lacked courage, but because everything felt completely wrong. So here's the real question. Why did scenes like this keep happening again and again along the same coastline? These weren't pirates who fought like criminals stealing food. They moved like professionals who had done this many times before. They didn't hesitate, didn't panic, and didn't look surprised, almost like they already knew how this fight would end. Every step, every swing, every shout came from experience, not training manuals or shouted commands from behind. Most of them had grown up around boats, blades, and danger long before anyone ever called them pirates. Fighting wasn't something they practiced occasionally. It was something they repeated until it became instinct. If this feels familiar, imagine office workers suddenly forced into a fight against trained MMA fighters. Before the first punch lands, everyone already knows who controls distance, timing, and fear itself. That's exactly how these pirates fought, controlling space, rhythm, and panic from the very first second. They rushed forward, closed distance fast, and turned confusion into advantage before orders even formed. Once blades met, individual courage meant nothing if your body didn't already know what to do. Soldiers froze, stumbled, or ran, not because they were weak, but because their bodies had never been here. So these pirates kept winning, not through numbers or luck, but through repeated survival under real violence. Over time, their reputation grew, and each victory made the next fight even easier for them. And along the coast, people began whispering the same question again and again. Why can't we beat them? But here's where the story gets strange, because these so-called Japanese pirates were not always Japanese at all. Sounds confusing, right? Then let me ask you something. Who actually decides what makes someone a pirate? Official records call them Japanese, but enemies are usually described in the simplest, angriest way possible. But if you look closer, many of these pirates were Chinese merchants, fishermen, and traders pushed outside the law. Ming China banned private sea trade, so continuing your job meant becoming a criminal overnight. Let me ask you this. If your entire livelihood suddenly became illegal, would you really just stop? Most people didn't stop sailing. They stopped obeying, quietly moving into smuggling and piracy instead. Now here's the key point. Although many pirates were Chinese, they didn't fight like Chinese soldiers. They fought using Japanese-style close combat, blades, aggression, and relentless forward pressure. Doesn't that feel strange? Not Japanese by birth, yet Japanese in the way they killed and survived. Think of nationality as a passport, but combat culture as muscle memory burned into your body. You can change flags, languages, even loyalties, but how you fight is painfully hard to rewrite. Many Chinese pirates hired Japanese fighters, learned from them, then copied their entire combat system. Over time, the line disappeared, until fighting like Japanese simply meant being called Japanese. So this was never about blood or ethnicity, but about who survived repeated, brutal, close-range violence. Let me ask you honestly, would you care who they were if they fought like this every time? And that's why officials feared them, because they weren't fighting men, they were fighting habits. Which brings us to an uncomfortable truth. Empires are terrible at fighting people like that. So now the obvious question appears, how could such a massive empire keep losing to groups of pirates? Ming China had walls, weapons, soldiers, commanders, and centuries of military tradition backing its authority. Yet whenever pirates landed, defenses collapsed faster than anyone expected, almost painfully fast to watch. This wasn't because soldiers were cowards, lazy, or unwilling to fight when orders finally came. Most of them were farmers just weeks earlier, suddenly handed weapons and ordered to face real killing. Let me ask you honestly, if you were told to fight a trained MMA fighter tomorrow, would your body be ready? Short training taught commands and formations, but it never taught what fear feels like up close. When blades closed the distance, survival instincts overrode orders, discipline, and even loyalty itself. So soldiers froze, broke formation, or ran, not from weakness, but from completely unfamiliar terror. Meanwhile, pirates moved forward calmly because their bodies had already survived this moment before. This created a cruel imbalance: trained violence versus untrained obedience, experience versus instruction. The Empire could raise armies quickly, but it could not manufacture fighters at the same speed. To reach pirate-level skill, soldiers needed years of repetition, injury, fear, and survival. And here's the terrifying realization: the Empire simply didn't have time to wait for that. Numbers couldn't fix this, money couldn't fix this, and courage alone absolutely couldn't. So the real failure wasn't the soldiers, but the system that sent them into impossible fights. And then, right in the middle of this humiliation, someone arrives who doesn't blame the soldiers at all. His name was Jiguang, and he looked at the coastline like a broken machine, not a battlefield. Let me ask you, what kind of person sees defeat and thinks, this is a design problem? Qi understood something terrifying. You can't turn farmers into pirate-level fighters in a few months. So he stopped dreaming about perfect soldiers and started building a system that could survive real chaos. The Ming court gave him coastal defense duties because the crisis was constant, and old methods kept failing. He recruited, drilled, punished, and repeated, not for show, but until movements became automatic under fear. Instead of relying on bravery, he relied on repetition, because repetition is the cheapest way to manufacture discipline. He also wrote manuals, not like poetry, but like instructions for survival, step by step, mistake by mistake. Later, these ideas appeared in works like Jixiao Xinshu, a practical handbook built from coastal blood and sweat. And he didn't just write theory, he tested it on the shore, then rewrote it when reality disagreed. Imagine that mindset for a second. Losing a battle, then calmly asking, which part of our process failed? That's why calling him a hero feels too simple. He was more like an engineer of war. He accepted he could not copy the pirates, so he decided to redesign the soldiers around teamwork. Because if one man can't beat a pirate, maybe 12 men, perfectly coordinated, can fight like one. And that idea leads us to the strangest invention of all, the Mandarin duck formation. Qi didn't try to teach every soldier perfect sword skills because that would take years and endless real fights. Instead, he asked a terrifyingly practical question. What if skill is not learned, but distributed? Imagine one pirate's attack as a short sequence. Block, push, stab, protect, and finish before you can breathe. Qi broke that sequence into roles, then assigned each role to a different man in the same small team. So one man's job was simply to hold a shield and never step back, no matter how scary it felt. Another held the Lanxian, that spiky bamboo, to keep blades away, turning distance into a weapon. Behind them, spearmen stabbed through openings, and heavy Dao swords finished the fight when the pirate stalled. It sounds simple, but it's actually brutal because the system forces everyone to do one job perfectly. Let me ask you, which is easier? Becoming an MMA champion or mastering one move inside a coordinated squad? How about on teamwork? Because teamwork scales while individual talent is slow, expensive, and painfully rare. This was the logic behind the Mandarin duck formation, a unit designed to fight like a single creature. If one man panicked, the whole line suffered, so discipline became survival, not morality or pride. Qi drilled them until muscle memory replaced thought, so fear could not interrupt the sequence anymore. And here's the twist. This formation wasn't a martial art. It was an algorithm written in human bodies. Suddenly, unremarkable farmers could survive the first clash, not by courage, but by predictable teamwork. So when pirates rushed in expecting panic, they met a machine, and for the first time, it held. The next battles didn't look dramatic at first, but something felt wrong, strangely quiet along the shoreline. Pirates rushed in like always, confident, fast, expecting panic, screams, and soldiers breaking formation instantly. But this time, the line didn't collapse at all. Shields stayed locked, feet stayed planted, and nobody broke or ran away. Let me ask you, can you imagine how unsettling that feels for someone used to instant victory? Blades struck shields, Langxian pushed space open, and the pirates' forward rhythm suddenly stalled. For the first time, pirates were forced to stop thinking about killing and start thinking about survival. Their individual skill had nowhere to go, trapped inside a system that refused to break apart. Meanwhile, Ming soldiers weren't winning yet, but they weren't losing either, and that alone changed everything. Battle stretched longer than pirates expected, turning speed into exhaustion, confidence into hesitation. Let me pause here. Doesn't that moment feel huge? The instant momentum quietly shifts sides. Eventually, pirates stepped back, then another step, until retreat became the only safe option left. This wasn't a heroic charge or brilliant ambush. It was simply a system refusing to fail under pressure. Along the coastline, rumors began spreading quietly, village to village, saying pirates no longer won every fight they started. And here's the real shock. Once pirates lost their certainty of victory, fear slowly and unmistakably changed sides. Soldiers began trusting the formation, not themselves, and that trust made them stronger together over time. From that moment on, the war stopped being about pirates and became about systems versus habits. At first, this still looks like a local problem. Pirates, soldiers, and a troubled coastline far from capitals. But let me ask you something. Why did so many governments across East Asia watch this so closely? Because this wasn't about pirates anymore, it was about how states survive organized, trained violence. Jiguang proved something dangerous. Systems could defeat warriors even without heroic individuals. That idea spread quietly, influencing military reforms, command structures, and how discipline was enforced. Armies began training not for bravery, but for coordination, repetition, and predictable behavior under fear. This shift mattered beyond China, shaping how Korea, Japan, and others imagined future warfare. Navies, fortifications, and coastal control all began prioritizing systems over individual combat skill. In Japan, central authorities eventually moved to crush pirates, absorbing or destroying independent sea violence. In China, manuals like Jixiao Xinshu turned lived battlefield experience into repeatable institutional knowledge. Slowly, states learned that controlling violence meant controlling training, structure, and time itself. Pirates didn't disappear overnight, but their advantage shrank as systems closed every familiar gap. What began as coastal chaos quietly pushed states toward modern ideas of centralized power. This is why this story matters, because it shows when states stopped chasing heroes and built machines. And maybe that's the real legacy of fighting pirates, not victory, but transformation. So let me ask you, after hearing this, what do you think real strength actually means? So maybe the real question was never why pirates were so strong, but why states misunderstood strength for so long. Because strength wasn't about bravery, weapons, or heroes. It was about systems that worked under fear. Tonight's story ends here, but that question might follow you longer than any battle ever could.